Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, for the first, let me introduce myself. My name is Nanda Yusuf Hardiansyah, and I'm from English Education Department 1 and 2. So, in this video, I will give my answer for the mid test for introduction to English literature. Okay then, in this video I will tell you the thing that I will explain. Actually there are 5 parts, and that is, the first is the concept of literature in ELT, and the second one is the position of literature in mainstream of ELT, and the third is the approach to the use of literature in ELT, and the fourth is literary works and English language teaching, and the last is teaching methods and ELT methods. So let's start it. Okay, for the first is what is the literature? Literature generally has two different contexts, such as pedagogy context and literary work context. Pedagogy context refers to one of academic subjects studied by students in a college, university, or other institute of higher education. For example, literature studied by students at the Department of English and Comparative Literature in Columbia University, New York. And literature in literary work point of view refers to a written piece of art produced by a certain author. And here I will give three theory by the expert. For the first is Engleton. For the first is by Engleton in 1983, defines literature as an art, and Besnet and Montfort in 1993 define literature as cultural document of a country or countries, and Onokwisi in 2013 defines literature is any imaginative and beautiful creation in the world, whether oral or written. So for me, I think actually literature, as I know that literature can be written and spoken from the literature which has been created by human and can educate it. Okay, next is literature for ELT. Using literature in ELT is very help, and also here, according to Hill in 1989, Lazar 1993, literature for ELT in the language classroom provides students with the opportunity to engage with a wide variety of meaningful texts that are infused by imaginative potential. It allows students to come into contact with the target language in interesting and genuine contexts. Okay, next is what is the relationship between literature and ELT? According to Elias in 2016, the potential benefits of using literature in ELT classroom seems to have been forgotten in recent ELT curriculum. What does Ilyas means by stating that? It means that in the context of recent curriculum in Indonesia, literature and English language teaching are treated as two separated areas. Also here, literature just can be found in English department. It is treated as an academic subject, but literature laws in ELT language teaching not included in curriculum ELT. But the perspective argument writes the literature and language are found to be together, connect, and can't be separated. Language is one method of communicating message, while literature can be used to convey message being communicated. In a nutshell, the relationship between literature and language is like symbiotic. If one or in which one will not exist without the other. Second part is the position of literature in the mainstream of ELT. Okay, for the first question in what is the trend of ELT today and the status of literature? So, according to Ilyas, in 2016, literature nowadays is widely neglected in ELT due to the opportunity of communicative approach. Consequently, many teachers feel anxiety about using literature in the classroom that they distract the practice of using literary text. From the Business of English Language Teaching by Sherry D. and Sherry Agius S. 2012, and the status of literature is not popular because the emergence of communicative approach with its method CLT and the functional based teaching, while literature is regarded unable to give those two things. Therefore, many English teaching avoid using it, or a few teachers want to use for teaching purpose. Okay, and the second one is what the pessimistic and optimistic view. Okay, for the first is the difference between the pessimist and the optimist view. The first is the pessimistic. The pessimistic view. According to Edmondson in 1997, it is unable to help the development of second language competence and proficiency of the learners. It means that studying language through literature is considered unable to help in developing the second language competence and skill of the learners. While the optimistic view, widely supported by teacher, researcher, and linguists, because literature is useful in developing students' linguistic knowledge both on a usage and use level. It can increase their reading motivation in order to improve their reading skill. Okay, the next is which view I support. Okay, the view I support is the optimistic view, because I think because literature can be useful in developing students' linguistic knowledge. It can increase their reading motivation in order to improve their reading skills, and literature is beneficial for students because it can benefit from the role of literature, namely language acquisition and language proficiency, as well as in studying literature little by little, means we have studied more in English culture. Okay, the third part is the approach to use of literature. Okay, for the first is the approach to use literature in ELT. There is three kinds of approach to the use of literature in language teaching context, and they are the first is a language based model. In this model, the language teachers focus on the language components available in a certain literature. For example, the use of grammar or syntax, types of vocabulary or morphology, and discourse, function, and meaning or semantic, to be taken into account in designing syllabus and teaching materials. And the second one is literature as content. In this approach, the language teacher are required to set the genre of the literature with language components to teach in the classroom. For example, when the learners prefer to learn poetry, so this genre is generally appropriate for practicing pronunciation skills and so on. And the third is literature for personal enrichment. In this model, the language teachers may use the certain literary work as the basis for selecting a particular activity to be applied in the classroom. The activity is aimed at giving the learners an opportunity to express their opinions, feelings, personal experience regarding the literary works. Okay, next is the approaches in ELT. So the first is traditional grammar approach. According to Smith in 2003, traditional grammar theory is the study of the structure as well as the formation of word morphology and sentence syntax, usually without much reference to sound and meaning. And the second one is a structural approach. This theory focuses on examining language as the static system of interconnect units. One of the following participant in this theory is structuralism requires learners to learn language skill as a unified system as a whole. And the third is the functional and communicative approach. Functionalism theory is known as an approach to language study that is concerned with studying the functions performed by language use. It views a language as a communicative system consisting of components of form and function that must be learned by the learners as a unified knowledge. Okay, the next is the roles of the two types of approach for the integration of literature and ELT. Okay, the first is traditional grammar approach. Consists of a basic model of language regarding the component of language and literature as content. The teacher knowledge of the literary genre or genre. The second one is the structural consists of basic model of language regarding the component of language and literature as enrichment itself, or giving students the opportunity. And the third is the functional and communicative approach consists is literature as content, the teacher knowledge of literary genre, and literature as enrichment itself, or giving students the opportunity to develop. Okay, the next part is the literary works for English language teaching. Okay, for the first is what is the differences between literature and literary works. So uh, literature may be defined as any spoken or written text result from the creativity of humans' mind, are commonly used to entertain or to educate people, and the literary works may be defined as any spoken or written text created as a result of human creative imagination that have been evaluated by reading and analyzing them. Uh, Regarding them make readers feel entertained or educated, while analyzing them make readers wide their way of looking at different issues and their belief. Okay, next is literary based English teaching materials and the possibilities to use in ELT. Okay, understood. Literary based ELT materials may be understood a special term applied to refer to any literatures of literary work which are used for teaching English language. Many English teachers encounter difficulty using one of them for teaching English. Why? Because for the first is the teachers are accustomed to using conventional teaching material which generally contains lesson on the main component of language such as vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. And the second one is only a few of them are used to using literature based teaching materials due to their lack of knowledge of how to use literature for language teaching, and this is a third teaching for them. Okay, the next is teaching and English language teaching. So teaching is then defined as the process of imparting knowledge or skill to a group of students by applying three main stages. For example, planning the teaching, giving instruction in teaching, and evaluating the teaching customs. Then English language teaching can be interpreted as the process of imparting skills and knowledge of English to a group of students whose first teaching is not English. Through the implementation are three main stages. For example, pre-teaching or planning while teaching or giving instruction, as well as post-teaching or measuring learning outcomes. Again, next is literary based ELT and possibilities to be employed in ELT. Literary based English language teaching. So what to teach? Okay, skill and knowledge of English by using literatures or literary works through the implementation of three main stages. For example, pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching, and how to teach it. So implementing a three main stage, for example, pre-teaching, uh, or planning, lesson plans, uh, teaching and teaching materials, and while teaching or giving instruction, like methods and technique, and post teaching or measuring teaching outcomes, like summative, formative evaluation. Okay, evaluation. The last part is the teaching methods and ELT methods. Okay, for the first is the concept of teaching methods and the types of teaching methods. Okay, the concept of teaching methods. So teaching method is then defined as the principles used for instruction, which may cover decision on teachers' way in giving lesson, how to encourage students participate in the classroom activities, and how to select and use teaching instruments. The, the choice of the teaching method to be used certainly depends on teaching goals and objectives, time allotment, and skill that is being taught. And for the theory, you can see okay, and for the theory, you can see by Smith's method and technique. Okay, and the second one is the concept of ELT methods and the types of ELT methods. So the concept of ELT methods and the types, for the concept, to understand the definition of English, of teaching English, then we must first understand the definition of teaching. The first is types. The one is pre-teaching, refers to things that teacher do before imparting knowledge to a group of students or planning for teaching. And the second one is the while teaching, refers to things that teachers do when imparting knowledge to a group of students. And the third is post teaching, refers to things that teachers do after doing the process of imparting knowledge to a group of students, or you can say that evaluation teaching. Okay, next is the function of knowledge of literature, approaches and methods for integrating literature in ELT. So, literary based English teaching, the process of imparting skills and knowledge of English to a group of students whose first language is not English, by using literatures or literary works uh, through the implementation of a three main stage, that is pre-teaching or planning, while teaching or giving instruction, and then post-teaching or measuring learning outcomes. And what about the approaches? So the approaches, there are three kinds of approaches to use of literature in language teaching context. That is, the first is language based model, the second is literature as a content, and the third is literature as personal enrichment. And what about the method? So the method is a skill and knowledge of English by using literatures of literary works through the implementation and of three main stage, that is pre-teaching, while teaching, and as well as post-teaching, and how to teach them. So implementation, three main stage, it is pre-teaching or planning, that is lesson plans or teaching materials. The second is while teaching or giving instruction, that is methods and techniques. And the last is post-teaching or measuring learning outcomes, that is summative, formative evaluation. So and the teaching technique, a way of imparting knowledge and skills of English using literature or literary works. Okay, that is my video about my answer actually for the mid test for introduction to English literary. So the conclusion that in my video is that I have explained that we can know what the concept of literature in ELT, and what the position of literature in the mainstream of ELT is, how we use the approach in ELT, and how we use literary works for ELT, and then what method that we use in teaching, and what ELT method is. Okay, I think that's all my video today. Just enjoy, and I do apologize for if in my video have many mistake. And for the last is thank you, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.